Deep under the Rocky Mountains in a secret base hidden from the world, Dr. Kevin Pierce hadn't slept in 30 hours. His eyes were red, and his hands shook slightly as he typed on his computer. Around him, 20 other scientists worked just as hard, all focused on the same goal, making sure Project Helios was ready. "Kevin, you need to rest," said Dr. Olivia Martinez as she placed a cup of coffee next to him. She had been his partner on the project from the start, 5 years ago. Kevin shook his head. "No time. The aliens gave us 48 hours. We've used half of that already." Olivia sat down next to him. On the big screen in front of them, numbers and diagrams showed the status of Project Helios. It was an idea that had seemed impossible just 10 years ago. A device that could create a small controlled black hole. A weapon that could bend space itself. "The power levels are still not stable," Kevin said, pointing to a flashing red number. "If they drop below 85% during use, the gravity field will collapse." Olivia nodded. "I know. I've been working on the power core. We're getting closer." The door to the lab opened and General Frank Nelson walked in. He looked as tired as the scientists, but his uniform was perfect and his back straight. "Status report," he demanded. Kevin stood up. "We're at 92% operational capacity, General. The gravity field is stable, but the targeting system still needs work." The general frowned. "You have 24 hours, Doctor. President Garcia has made her decision. We are not surrendering to the Empire." Kevin wasn't surprised. From everything they had learned about the Galactic Empire, surrender would mean the end of human freedom. Earth would become a resource to be used, its people little more than slaves. "We'll be ready," Kevin promised. After the general left, Kevin and Olivia went back to work with new energy. Project Helios was humanity's best hope, maybe its only hope, against the advanced technology of the Empire. In the testing chamber next to the main lab, a small metal device sat on a platform. It didn't look special, just a sphere about the eye, size of a basketball with a smooth, dark surface. But inside was technology that no human had even dreamed of a century ago. "Let's run another test," Kevin said. 25% power this time." Olivia nodded and typed the commands. The device began to hum, a soft sound that grew louder. The air around it seemed to bend and wave, like heat rising from hot pavement. "Gravity field forming," Olivia reported, watching her screens. "Stable at 25%. Kevin watched as instruments around the device began to float, pulled toward the sphere by its artificial gravity. Then, suddenly, a warning alarm sounded. "Power fluctuation," Olivia called out. "The field is becoming unstable." Kevin rushed to his computer. "Shut it down, now." Olivia hit the emergency stop button and the humming sound slowly died. The floating instruments fell back to the ground. "What happened?" Kevin asked, checking the data. "The power core couldn't maintain the field," Olivia said. "We're missing something." For the next 12 hours they worked to solve the problem. Twice more they tested the device and twice more it failed. Time was running out. Finally, as they were about to start a fourth test, Kevin had an idea. "What if we're thinking about this wrong? We've been trying to create a stable field that lasts for minutes, but what if we make it unstable on purpose?" Olivia looked confused. "Why would we want that?" "Because we don't need the black hole to last," Kevin explained, excitement in his voice. "We just need it to form for a few seconds, long enough to do damage and then collapse safely. A pulse, not a sustained field." Olivia's eyes widened as she understood. "That would use less power. We could make it stronger for a shorter time." They quickly made changes to the program. When they ran the next test, the device hummed louder than before. The air bent more sharply. For 3 seconds, the gravity was so strong that a metal chair across the room was pulled toward the sphere, crashing into it. Then, as planned, the field collapsed. The device shut down safely. Kevin and Olivia looked at each other, hope in their eyes for the first time in days. "It worked," Olivia whispered. "It worked," Kevin agreed. "Now we need to make 50 more fast." On the bridge of the Valiant, Admiral Susan Jones was meeting with her top officers. The holographic display showed the positions of the Earth fleet and the alien ships. The Empire's fleet hadn't moved, still waiting at the edge of the solar system. "The Helios devices are being loaded onto our smallest ships," Susan explained, pointing to dots representing Earth vessels. "Each ship will carry one device. When activated, each device will create a gravity well strong enough to crush even their largest ships." Commander Paul Green looked worried. "But the ships carrying the devices will have to get close to the aliens. Won't they be destroyed before they can activate Helios?" Susan nodded. "That's a risk, but we have a plan." She touched the display, and it changed to show a new formation. "We'll use our main fleet as a distraction. While we engage their front line, the Helios ships will approach from different angles. They're small and fast, harder to track." Lieutenant Alan Miller spoke up. "The Empire ships are huge. Do we even know if our regular weapons will hurt them?" Susan's face was grim. "Probably not much, but we don't need to win that fight. We just need to keep their attention long enough for the Helios ships to get into position." Nancy Wright at Communications turned suddenly. "Admiral, we're receiving a message from Earth. President Garcia wants to speak with you." Susan nodded. "Put her through." The president's face appeared on the main screen. She looked calm but serious. "Admiral Jones, are your forces ready?" She asked. "Yes, Madam President, the fleet is in position and the Helios devices are being deployed as we speak." President Garcia nodded. "Good. I'm about to address the Empire and give them our answer. I wanted to check with you first." Susan stood straight. "We're as ready as we'll ever be, Madam President." "Very well." The President paused. "You know, throughout history, smaller nations have stood up to empires. Sometimes, against all odds, they've won." Susan smiled slightly. "Yes, ma'am. And we have something those empires never expected. A secret weapon." "Not just Helios, Admiral," the President said. "The human spirit, our determination to be free." She took a deep breath. "I'll make the call now. Be ready for anything." As the call ended, Susan turned to her crew. "Battle stations, this is not a drill." Across the fleet, sirens sounded. Pilots ran to their fighters. Gunners manned their weapons. Engineers checked engines and shields. Every man and woman knew what was at stake. Not just their lives, but the freedom of all humanity. In the underground base, Kevin and Olivia watched as the last Helios device was loaded onto a transport. "Will it be enough?" Olivia asked quietly. Kevin put his arm around her shoulders. "It has to be." The clock was ticking. In just 1 hour, humanity would make its stand against the Galactic Empire. Everything they had worked for, everything they had built would be put to the test, and the future of Earth hung in the balance. Admiral Susan Jones stood by the large window on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force ship Valiant. She looked at the stars and the dark space beyond them. Her ship was the biggest in Earth's fleet, but she knew it was small compared to what was coming. "Admiral, we have something on our long-range sensors," said Lieutenant Alan Miller. His voice was steady, but Susan could see worry in his eyes. Susan walked to the main screen. "Show me." The screen lit up with an image that made everyone on the bridge go quiet. A massive ship, at least 20 times larger than the Valiant, had appeared at the edge of the solar system. It wasn't alone. 5 smaller ships surrounded it like guards around a king. "How long have they been there?" Susan asked. "They just appeared, ma'am," said Nancy Wright from her post at Communications. "No warning, they didn't use any jump points we know about." Susan nodded slowly. Earth had been expecting this day. For 50 years, since humans first left their planet and found signs of alien life, they had been preparing. Intelligence reports had warned about the Galactic Empire, a group of advanced alien species that ruled nearly a third of the galaxy. The Empire had one way of dealing with new civilizations: join us or be destroyed. "Any messages from them?" Susan asked. "Nothing yet," Nancy replied. "They're just watching." Susan turned to her second in command, Commander Paul Green. "Alert, Earth Central Command. Tell them First Contact Protocol Alpha is now active. Paul nodded and moved quickly to send the message. Everyone on the bridge knew what Protocol Alpha meant. Humanity was about to face its greatest test. Susan looked back at the screen. The alien ships hadn't moved. Their designs were unlike anything humans had built, smooth with no visible engines or weapons, glowing with a faint blue light that seemed to bend the space around them. "Admiral," Nancy called suddenly, "we're receiving a transmission." "Put it on screen," Susan ordered. The image of the ships disappeared, replaced by a figure that made several crew members gasp. The alien was tall and humanoid, but its skin was blue and smooth like polished stone. It had 4 large eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on its face, no visible nose, and a small mouth that didn't move when it spoke. "Humans of Earth," the alien said, its voice deep and strangely musical. "I am High Commander Zixtor of the Galactic Empire Ship Eternal Dominion. Your species has been monitored for some time." Susan stepped forward. "This is Admiral Susan Jones of the Earth Defense Force. We welcome peaceful contact with—" The alien continued as if she hadn't spoken. "The Imperial Council has determined that Earth will now be incorporated into the Empire as a protectorate world." The bridge grew even quieter. Everyone knew what protectorate really meant. "Your technology has advanced quickly for such a young species," Zixtor said. "But you remain primitive by Imperial standards. Your options are simple. Accept Imperial rule and benefit from our guidance, or face the consequences. You have 48 Earth hours to surrender. If your ships are not withdrawn by that time, we will consider it an act of war." The screen went dark. For a moment no one spoke. Then Lieutenant Miller broke the silence. "What do we do now, Admiral?" Susan straightened her uniform jacket. "We fight." The next 12 hours passed in a blur of activity. All across Earth, defense systems that had been built in secret for decades were activated. Hidden bases on the Moon and Mars came online. The other 7 ships of Earth's defense fleet joined the Valiant in a protective formation around their home planet. In the White House Situation Room, Susan stood before President Laura Garcia and the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The room was tense as Susan finished her report. "Based on what we can tell from their ships, ma'am, they outgun us by at least 20 to 1, Susan said. "Their technology appears to be centuries ahead of ours in most areas." President Garcia, a former Navy officer herself, nodded gravely. "And what about Project Helios?" Susan glanced at the scientist sitting quietly in the corner. Dr. Kevin Pierce looked exhausted, his eyes red from lack of sleep. "Dr. Pierce can answer that better than I can," Susan replied. Kevin stood up and walked to the center of the room. "Project Helios is operational, Madam President. The theory is sound. We've successfully tested it at 30% capacity without incident." "But you've never tested it at full power," General Frank Nelson said. It wasn't a question. "No, sir," Kevin admitted. "The energy requirements were too great to hide from civilian observation. But all simulations indicate it will work exactly as designed." President Garcia looked around the room at each person's face. "I need your honest assessment. Can we win this fight?" General Nelson spoke first. "If Project Helios works as Dr. Pierce believes, we have a chance. Without it—" He didn't need to finish the sentence. Susan stepped forward. "Madam President, with your permission, I'd like to deploy the Helios devices now before the deadline. Position them where they can be most effective when the time comes." The President thought for a moment, then nodded. "Do it, but keep them inactive until my command." As the meeting ended, President Garcia asked Susan to stay behind. When they were alone, the President walked to the window overlooking the White House garden. "You know, my grandfather told me stories about World War II, she said quietly. "About how the whole world changed in just a few years. I think we're at another moment like that." Susan nodded. "Yes, ma'am. I believe we are." The President turned to face her. "What aren't you telling the others, Susan?" Susan hesitated. She and Laura had been friends since their academy days. "The Helios project will work, I have no doubt about that. But even if we defeat this fleet, the Empire will send more. They control thousands of worlds, millions of ships. We can win a battle, but the war— President Garcia smiled slightly. One battle at a time, Admiral. And remember what my grandfather also told me. Bullies don't like getting punched in the nose. Sometimes that's all it takes. Susan left the White House and returned to the Valiant. As her shuttle approached the ship, she looked down at Earth. Blue oceans, white clouds, green and brown landmasses. Home. Worth fighting for. Worth dying for if necessary. Back on the bridge, Lieutenant Miller updated her. The alien ships haven't moved, Admiral. They're just sitting there. Susan nodded. They think we'll surrender. They think we have no choice. She walked to her command chair and sat down. Nancy, open a channel to all Earth Defense Force ships. When the connection was ready, Susan spoke clearly and firmly. This is Admiral Jones. In 24 hours, we will likely face the greatest threat humanity has ever known. We are outnumbered and outgunned. But throughout our history, humans have overcome impossible odds. We've survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and our own mistakes. We've climbed from caves to the stars by never giving up, never surrendering to fear. She paused, looking at her crew. She saw determination in their eyes, not fear. The aliens call themselves an empire. They expect us to bow down. They expect us to be afraid. Let's show them what happens when they threaten Earth. Let's show them who we really are. Across the fleet, thousands of men and women prepared for battle. In hidden bases, the mysterious Helios devices were loaded onto special ships. And in space, the alien fleet waited, unaware that Earth had a secret weapon and the will to use it. President Laura Garcia stood in the large meeting room in Geneva, where world leaders had gathered. The room was quiet as she walked to the front. Screens on the wall showed the alien ship still waiting at the edge of the solar system. Every person in the room knew this was the most important moment in human history. President Garcia wore a simple blue suit. Her gray hair was pulled back, and her face showed no fear, only determination. Behind her stood leaders from all countries of Earth. For the first time in history, all nations stood together, united against a common threat. "Are we ready to broadcast?" she asked the technical team. A young woman nodded. "Yes, Madam President. We're connected to all Earth stations and have a direct link to the alien fleet." President Garcia took a deep breath. This was the moment that would decide the fate of humanity. She nodded, and a red light on the camera turned on, showing they were now broadcasting. "High Commander Zixtor of the Galactic Empire," she began, her voice strong and clear. "I speak to you today for all people of Earth. We have received your message asking for our surrender." She paused, looking straight into the camera. "Throughout our history, humans have faced many threats. We have fought against those who tried to take our freedom. Today is no different." The room remained silent as she continued. "The people of Earth have made their choice. We reject your offer. We will not surrender. We will not become a protectorate. We will not bow to the Empire." On the Empire's main ship, High Commander Zixtor watched the human leader with surprise. In his long life, he had helped bring many new worlds into the Empire. Some had fought, but most surrendered when they saw the Empire's power. No one had ever simply refused like this. "Furthermore," President Garcia continued, "we have our own declaration. No galactic Empire ships are allowed in Earth space. Any Empire ship that comes near Earth or its colonies will be seen as an enemy and will be met with force. This is not open for discussion. This is Earth's position." Zixtor's 4 eyes blinked rapidly, showing his surprise. He touched a control, and his image appeared on the screen in Geneva. "You do not understand your position, human," he said, his voice filled with anger. "Your simple weapons cannot harm our ships. Your declaration means nothing without the power to enforce it." President Garcia smiled slightly. "Perhaps we should show you what we can do." She looked off camera and nodded to someone. In space, Admiral Susan Jones on the Valiant received the signal she had been waiting for. "Deploy Helios ships Alpha through Delta," she ordered. 4 small, fast ships broke away from the Earth fleet and moved toward the Empire's ships. They were simple vessels, not much bigger than a bus, with no visible weapons. "What are those?" demanded Zixtor, watching the small ships approach. "Our answer," replied President Garcia. For several tense minutes, nothing seemed to happen. The small Earth ships moved to different positions around the outer edge of the Empire's fleet. They were so small compared to the massive alien vessels that they looked like flies next to elephants. Then Admiral Jones gave the order, "Activate Helios devices." In the control room under the Rocky Mountains, Kevin Pierce pressed a button on his computer. Helios activation sequence started. At first, nothing visible happened. Then, space itself seemed to bend around 4 points near the edge of the Empire's fleet. The stars behind those points appeared to move and stretch. Suddenly, one of the smaller Empire ships began to twist. Its hull bent inward as if being crushed by a giant hand. 3 more Empire vessels suffered the same fate, their advanced shields offering no protection against the bending of space itself. In seconds, the 4 ships were crushed into small, dense balls of metal and other materials. Then the gravity fields disappeared, leaving the destroyed ships floating in space. On the Valiant, the crew watched with amazement. The Helios devices had worked even better than expected. "Status report," Admiral Jones called out. "All 4 targets destroyed," Lieutenant Miller reported, his voice filled with wonder. "The Empire's other ships are backing away." In Geneva, the room erupted in cheers as they watched the demonstration on the screens. President Garcia remained calm, looking at the image of Zixtor. The alien commander's blue face had turned a lighter shade, which she guessed meant he was shocked or afraid. "Demonstration complete," President Garcia stated calmly. "Those were our smallest Helios devices used at low power. We have hundreds more with much greater strength. You have 1 hour to move your fleet beyond Neptune's orbit. After that, we will consider your presence an act of war." The screens went dark as she ended the transmission. For a moment, the room was quiet again. Then one of the other world leaders spoke. "Will they leave?" he asked. President Garcia turned to face the room. "I don't know. But we've shown them we are not helpless. We've shown them Earth will not be an easy conquest." Back on the Imperial flagship, Zixtor was meeting with his officers. The loss of 4 ships had shocked them all. Nothing like this had happened to an Imperial fleet in living memory. "How is this possible?" asked Sub-Commander Krell, his tentacles waving with agitation. "Their technology should be primitive. They haven't even left their own solar system yet." Zixtor moved to the window and looked out at the distant blue planet. "Clearly, our information was wrong. These humans have somehow developed gravity. Weapons, technology that should be beyond them." "What are your orders, High Commander?" another officer asked. Zixtor was silent for a long moment. The Imperial Council had given him clear instructions. Bring Earth into the Empire or destroy it. Retreat was not mentioned. "Move the fleet into attack formation," he finally ordered. "Target their major cities and military bases. We will show these humans what happens when they defy the Empire." "But High Commander, their weapons, those small ships had to get close to our vessels," Zixtor interrupted. "We will destroy them before they can reach us. Launch fighters to protect our capital ships." As the Empire fleet began to move, Admiral Jones watched from the Valiant. "They're coming," she said quietly. "All ships prepare for battle." The Earth fleet moved to meet the approaching Empire ships. Human fighters launched from carrier ships, looking tiny next to the huge alien vessels. In the control room, Kevin and Olivia monitored the Helios network. "All devices are online," Olivia reported. "Ready to deploy on command." Kevin nodded, his face serious. "This is it. Everything we've worked for comes down to the next few minutes." Above them, in space, the 2 fleets drew closer. The Empire. Ships began to glow as they charged their weapons. The Earth ships spread out, following the plan Admiral Jones had created. The final battle for Earth's freedom was about to begin. The space between Earth and Mars lit up with bright flashes as the Empire ships fired their weapons. Huge beams of energy shot toward the Earth fleet. Some of the smaller human ships were hit and exploded immediately. Others managed to dodge the deadly beams. Admiral Susan Jones held onto her command chair as the Valiant shook. A blast had hit their shields. "Shield status," she called out. "Shields at 60%, Admiral," reported Lieutenant Miller. "One more direct hit like that and they'll fail." Susan looked at the tactical display. The Empire ships were advancing in a tight formation. Their big ships were in the center, protected by smaller vessels. It was a good strategy. The Empire clearly had thousands of years of experience in space battles. "Where are the Helios ships?" Susan asked. Commander Paul Green pointed to small dots moving around the edges of the battle. "In position, Admiral, waiting for your command." Susan nodded. This was the moment they had prepared for. Everything depended on timing. "Tell all our ships to pull back," she ordered. "Make it look like we're retreating." The Earth fleet began to move away from the approaching Empire ships. From the Empire's view, it would look like humans were running away after seeing the power of their weapons. On the Imperial flagship, High Commander Zixtor watched with satisfaction. "The humans retreat after a single volley," he said to his officers. "As expected, their bravery was just for show." "Should we pursue, High Commander?" asked Sub-Commander Krell. "Yes, move forward. Target their main ship and their planet. Once their leaders see their homes burning, they will surrender." The Empire fleet moved forward, following the retreating Earth ships. They didn't notice the small Helios vessels moving into a new pattern around them. In the control center under the mountains, Kevin and Olivia watched the battle on their screens. "The Empire ships are entering the trap," Kevin said. "All Helios devices show ready status." Olivia nodded, her fingers moving quickly over her keyboard. "I've updated the targeting. Each device will create a stronger gravity field than in our demonstration, but for a shorter time." Kevin looked at the main screen, which showed Admiral Jones on the bridge of the Valiant. "Admiral, we're ready. All 20 Helios devices are in position." Susan's face was serious. "Understood. Stand by." The Admiral watched as the Empire fleet moved deeper into the trap. The enemy ships were now surrounded by the hidden Helios vessels. "Now," Susan ordered. "Activate all Helios devices." Kevin pressed the command button. "Helios network activating." In space, strange distortions appeared around the Empire fleet. Stars seemed to bend and stretch as 20 points of incredible gravity formed. But unlike in the demonstration, these weren't aimed directly at the Empire ships. Instead, they created a pattern of gravity wells that trapped the alien fleet. The massive Imperial dreadnought fired its engines, trying to escape the trap. But it couldn't move. The other Empire ships were similarly stuck, caught in a web of artificial gravity that neutralized their engines. "Phase 2, ordered Susan. Kevin activated the second part of the plan. Half of the Helios devices moved closer to the trapped fleet. Instead of creating gravity wells to hold the ships in place, these devices were set to attack. Space bent again, and 3 of the Empire's smaller ships were crushed, just like in the demonstration. A 4th ship tried to fire its weapons, but the energy beams curved away, pulled by the gravity fields. "It's working," Olivia said, excitement in her voice. "The gravity fields are bending their weapon fire." On the Valiant, the crew watched with amazement as the Empire's mighty weapons became useless. The energy beams fired from the alien ships curved away from their targets, bending in the artificial gravity until they dispersed harmlessly in space. "All Earth ships, hold position," Susan ordered. "Let the Helios network do its work." On the Imperial flagship, chaos had broken out. Alarms sounded as systems failed. The mighty ship over a mile long was unable to move or fire effectively. "How is this possible?" Zixtor demanded, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. "Their technology cannot be this advanced." "High Commander, we cannot break free," reported an officer. "The gravity fields are too strong. 3 of our escort ships have been destroyed, and 4 more report severe damage." Zixtor had never faced defeat before. In 300 years of serving the Empire, he had conquered dozens of worlds. Never had he encountered a species that could stand against Imperial technology. "Send a message to the humans," he ordered finally. "Tell them we will discuss terms." In Geneva, President Garcia and the world leaders watched the battle on the big screens. A cheer went up when they saw the Empire fleet trapped and unable to fight back. "Madam President, called a communications officer. "We're receiving a message from the Empire flagship." Laura Garcia straightened her jacket. "Put it through." The face of High Commander Zixtor appeared on the screen. His blue skin now looked almost white. "President of Earth," he said, his voice less confident than before. "It seems we have underestimated your species. I propose a temporary ceasefire to discuss this situation." President Garcia's face showed no emotion. "The situation is simple, High Commander. Your fleet is in violation of Earth's declaration. You were ordered to withdraw beyond Neptune's orbit. You chose to attack instead." "There has been a misunderstanding," Zixtor said quickly. "The Empire does not wish war with Earth. We merely sought to open diplomatic relations." A small smile appeared on President Garcia's face. "With an ultimatum of surrender or destruction? That is not how Earth conducts diplomacy." She turned and looked at the other world leaders, who nodded their agreement. "Here are our terms, High Commander," she continued. "Your fleet will withdraw immediately from our solar system. The Empire will recognize Earth and all its current and future colonies as sovereign territory. Any future contact will be conducted on equal terms, not as conqueror and subject." Zixtor's eyes narrowed. "And if we refuse? Then we will be forced to destroy your entire fleet," President Garcia replied calmly. "As you have seen, we have the means to do so." For a long moment there was silence. Then Zixtor bowed his head slightly. "I will consult with the Imperial Council. Until then, I agree to a ceasefire." As the transmission ended, cheers erupted in the room again. President Garcia raised her hands for quiet. "This isn't over," she warned. "The Empire has ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They won't accept defeat easily." On the Valiant, Admiral Jones received the news of the ceasefire with caution. "Keep all ships on alert," she ordered, "and keep the Helios network active. I don't trust the Empire." To honor the ceasefire, in the control center, Kevin and Olivia finally allowed themselves to relax slightly. "We did it," Olivia said, taking Kevin's hand. "Helios worked." Kevin nodded, but his face remained serious. "For now. But the President is right. This isn't over. The Empire will be back." Outside, in the cold darkness of space, the human and alien fleets faced each other. A new chapter in human history had begun. For the first time, humanity had met a mighty empire and stood its ground. 1 month after the battle, representatives from Earth and the Galactic Empire met on a space station orbiting Mars. The station was new, built specially for this meeting. It was neutral ground where both sides could talk without fear. Admiral Susan Jones led the Earth team alongside President Laura Garcia. High Commander Zixtor and 2 other aliens represented the Empire. The meeting room was large, with a round table in the center. Through the windows, the red planet Mars could be seen below. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," President Garcia began. "But let me be clear. This meeting is not to discuss Earth becoming part of the Empire. That option is not on the table." Zixtor's 4 eyes narrowed, but his voice was calmer than during their earlier talks. "The Imperial Council has sent me to discuss a different arrangement." He pressed a button on his wrist, and a map of the galaxy appeared as a hologram. Above the table, it showed different colored areas representing different powers in the galaxy. "The Empire controls much of the galaxy," Zixtor explained, pointing to the largest area. "But we are not alone. The Arcosian Collective controls this region, and the Meridian Conquered controls this one. Both have grown stronger in recent years." Susan looked at the map with interest. "You're saying the Empire has enemies?" "Rivals," Zixtor corrected. "And now it seems Earth is another." President Garcia leaned forward. "We don't want to be your enemy, Commander. We simply won't be your subjects." Zixtor nodded slowly. "The Imperial Council has reconsidered its approach to Earth. Your gravity technology was unexpected. Our scientists believed such control of space was impossible for a young species." "The technology is fully human," Kevin Pierce said from his seat next to Admiral Jones. "We developed it ourselves through our understanding of physics." This seemed to surprise the aliens. They talked quickly in their own language, which sounded like music to human ears. If humans have developed such technology on their own, we must change how we see your species, Zixtor admitted. For the next 6 hours, the two sides talked. They discussed borders, trade, and how they would interact in the future. By the end of the day, they had created the Mars Agreement. The Empire would recognize Earth and its colonies as free and independent. In return, Earth would share some of its technology, though not the Helios devices. As the aliens prepared to leave, Zixtor approached President Garcia. "You should know," he said quietly. "Not everyone in the Empire agrees with this agreement. Some believe we should have brought our full fleet and taken Earth by force." President Garcia met his four-eyed gaze steadily. "And what do you believe, Commander?" Zixtor was silent for a moment. "I believe that a species that developed gravity weapons while still mostly confined to their home planet is not to be underestimated." After the meeting, President Garcia and Admiral Jones walked together through the space station. "They'll be back," Susan said. "Maybe not tomorrow, but someday. The Empire doesn't give up easily." President Garcia nodded. "That's why I've already approved the next phase of our plan. We need to establish 20 new colonies in the next 5 years. Humanity needs to spread out, become too big for the Empire to easily control. And the Helios program? Dr. Pierce and Dr. Martinez are working on the next generation already. Smaller, more powerful, with longer range." The president smiled, slightly. The Empire thought they were dealing with a weak young species. They didn't realize they were meeting the most adaptable species in the galaxy. 3 months later, on a rocky planet circling a distant star, Kevin and Olivia stood watching as construction robots built the first buildings of New Hope Colony. It was Earth's most distant outpost yet, 50 light-years from home. "Do you think we're safe here?" Olivia asked, looking up at the strange constellations in the alien sky. Kevin took her hand. "I don't know, but I do know we're not hiding anymore. For thousands of years, humanity looked up at the stars and wondered if we were alone. Now we know we're not, and we're taking our place among those stars." A shuttle landed nearby, and Admiral Jones walked out. She wore a simple uniform now without all the formal decorations. "Beautiful place you've chosen," she said, looking around at the mountains and valleys of the New World. "It reminds me of Colorado," Kevin replied. "Feels like home," Susan nodded. "That's good, because it is home now. One of many homes for humanity." She pointed to a building under construction. "The new Helios Control Center is almost complete. From here, we'll be able to protect all our new colonies." Olivia looked worried. "Do you really think the Empire will break the agreement?" Susan's face grew serious. "Empires always want to expand, it's their nature. The agreement buys us time, but we need to be ready." Later that night, Susan stood alone on a hill overlooking the new colony. Lights glowed in the windows of the buildings, and she could hear music and laughter from the colonists gathering. She thought about Earth so far away now. Throughout human history, small nations had stood up to mighty empires. Sometimes, against all odds, they had won their freedom. Now humanity was doing the same thing on a galactic scale. She remembered President Garcia's words from the day they faced the Empire. Earth's declaration wasn't just about keeping Empire ships away from our planet. It was humanity's announcement. To the galaxy, we're here, we're free, and we intend to stay that way. Susan looked up at the stars. Different stars than those she had grown up seeing, but still bright with promise. Among those countless points of light were other species, other civilizations, other empires. Some would be friends, some enemies. Many would be watching to see if the humans who had defied the mighty galactic empire would survive. She smiled, to herself. If there was one thing humans were good at, it was surviving. And not just surviving, but growing stronger through challenges. In the darkness of space, Earth might have seemed small and unimportant. But the Empire, and soon the rest of the galaxy, was learning what countless would-be conquerors throughout human history had discovered. Underestimating humanity was a dangerous mistake. The declaration had been made. The line had been drawn, and humanity was just getting started.